In 1587, 117 English colonists landed on an island in North Carolina. 3 years later, when their governor returned, they were gone. Not attacked, not buried, not fled in panic, the houses had been carefully taken down, a new wall had been built. And a single word was carved into a post. CROATOAN. That word is not the mystery, what happened after it is. 91 men, 17 women, 9 children, sailing to build England's first permanent colony in the New World. Their destination was Chesapeake Bay. Their pilot had other plans. Simon Fernandez, the expedition's pilot, had made this voyage twice before. He knew the waters, he knew the dangers, and he knew that Roanoke Island was not where these families were supposed to go. Yet on July 22, 1587, he put them ashore anyway. Then he sailed back to England. To understand what happened, we must understand what this colony was meant to be. Sir Walter Raleigh had already failed once. In 1585, he sent 108 military men under Ralph Lane to Roanoke Island. They made enemies of the local CROATOAN tribe. They found no gold. They starved. In June 1586, Sir Francis Drake evacuated the survivors. Raleigh learned from his mistake. The 1587 expedition would be different. Families, not soldiers. Farmers, not fighters. A charter drawn on January 7, 1587, named John White governor. White was an artist and cartographer, not a soldier. He had painted the people and places of the New World. Now he would lead 117 colonists to build a city. The plan was specific. Stop briefly at Roanoke to check on 15 soldiers Grenville had left behind, then sail north to the Chesapeake Bay, where deep-water harbors would protect English shipping. But Simon Fernandez, the pilot who had navigated both previous voyages, refused to continue. Historians still debate why. Some believe he wanted to return to privateering. Others suggest he feared the deeper waters. Whatever his reason, 117 people were stranded on an island where the last English colony had already failed. The 15 soldiers were gone. Only bones remained. The CROATOAN tribe, still angry over Lane's 1586 attack that beheaded their leader Pemisipon, were not welcoming. But the colonists had no ships, no supplies to continue, and 2 women about to give birth. They settled in the abandoned 1585 fort and tried to survive. In the 6 weeks that followed, the colonists built houses, planted crops, and repaired the old fort. But they were isolated, undersupplied, and surrounded by tribes who had good reason to distrust the English. They needed more people, more food, more weapons, and they needed their governor to go back to England and bring them. Eleanor Dare was not yet 30. She had married Ananias Dare in 1583, 4 years before this voyage. Now she was 5 months pregnant when they sailed, and by late July she was weeks from delivery. Her father was the governor. Her husband was one of his assistants. She was among the first English women ever sent to colonize the New World. The 117 colonists were not soldiers. They were carpenters and bricklayers, farmers and tailors. They brought their wives and children because this was meant to be permanent. Among them were Eleanor Dare, her husband Ananias, and Dionys Harvey, whose wife Marjorie would give birth during the colony's first year, and more than 100 others whose names survive in the records. On August 18, 1587, Eleanor Dare gave birth to a daughter. They named her Virginia, after the colony. She was the first child of English parentage born in the Americas. Her grandfather, the governor, recorded the birth in his journal. 6 days later, on August 24th, she was baptized, the first Christian sacrament performed in English America. John White had come to paint the New World. Instead, he was holding his granddaughter in it. She was 9 days old when the colonists made a decision that would seal all of their fates. The colonists wrote a formal appeal, unanimous. They needed supplies, protection, and their governor to be the one to get them. White resisted. He was one of the few colonists with experience in Virginia. He knew the land, the people, the dangers. He should have been considered indispensable, but the colonists insisted. And on August 27, 1587, 9 days after Virginia Dare was born, John White sailed for England. He promised to return within 3 months. He would never see them again. White arrived in England in November 1587, already behind schedule. Then the world changed. In July 1588, the Spanish Armada sailed for England. Every English ship was commandeered for defense. White's resupply mission was cancelled. In March 1588, he managed to board 2 small ships, the Brave and the Roe, with 15 additional colonists. A French attack left him wounded. The ships turned back. 3 years. 3 years of war, storms, and failed attempts. While in England, John White could only wait and hope that his daughter, his granddaughter, and 115 other people he had promised to protect were still alive on an island he had never wanted them to land on. Finally, in March 1590, White joined a fleet of English privateers willing to take him to Roanoke. They spent months attacking Spanish ships along the way. White, now in his 60s, waited. On August 16, 1590, the fleet reached the Outer Banks of North Carolina. A storm sank one of the ships. The captain and 6 crewmen drowned. The remaining vessels anchored off the coast. On August 18, 1590, Virginia Dare's 3rd birthday, John White went ashore. He found fresh Indian footprints. He found a wildfire burning. He found the settlement dismantled, houses taken down, a new palisade of trees built where homes had stood. And on one of the palisade posts, carved deep into the wood, he found a single word: CROATOAN. White and the colonists had agreed on a signal. If they left under duress, they would carve a Maltese cross. There was no cross. On a tree nearby, he found the letters CRO. The message was incomplete, or the tree had grown around the rest, but the word was clear, and it was not a cry for help. Today, most historians believe the colonists of Roanoke did not die in a single catastrophe. They believe 117 people did not vanish into myth, but into history, scattered across the coast of North Carolina, absorbed into tribes, or settled in places we are only now finding. But when John White stood in that empty settlement on his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, he found no bodies, no weapons, no graves, and a word carved into a tree that raised more questions than it answered. White found his own sea chests buried where he had left them. They had been opened. His armor, books and maps were scattered and ruined by rain, but they had not been stolen. Someone had opened them, looked inside and left them. This was not the behavior of raiders. The houses had been carefully taken apart. The materials were gone. In their place, someone had built a defensive palisade, a wall of tree trunks. But who? The colonists, natives, and why dismantle homes to build a fort after the people had already left? CROATOAN was the island home of Manteo, the friendly CROATOAN ally who had traveled to England and been baptized a Christian. White knew the location. He believed the colonists had relocated there. He convinced 2 ship captains to sail south and search. One ship lost its anchor and nearly ran aground. The other captain, Abraham Cock, convinced White, always pliable, always persuadable, to abandon the search and sail for the Caribbean instead. White never returned to Roanoke. He died 3 years later, in 1593, without ever knowing what happened to his daughter, his granddaughter, or the 115 people he had left behind. For 4 centuries, the mystery of Roanoke was treated as a single question: what happened to 117 people? But modern archaeology suggests the question was wrong. They may not have been one group in one place meeting one fate. In 2012, archaeologists from the First Colony Foundation excavated a site at Salmon Creek in Bertie County, North Carolina. They called it Site X. Beneath a patch on John White's 1585 map, researchers at the British Museum had discovered a symbol resembling a fort. The ceramics found at Site X included Surrey, Hampshire borderware, Martin Camp stoneware, and North Devon baluster jars, all consistent with late 16th century English manufacture. The archaeologists were cautious. "We do not have the smoking gun," said Nicholas Luch-Ketty, director of the excavations. "We have no features of European-built structures. We have not found a fort." But the pottery was not trade goods. The quantity, variety, and domestic nature suggested English people living there, not just trading. More recently, Site Y was discovered near the Chowan River, north of Site X. The ceramic finds there exceeded Site X: London redware, Spanish olive jars, Essex fine redware. The archaeologists concluded a small contingent of colonists had lived there briefly, not the main group, a splinter, a family perhaps, or 3. Then in January 2025, a different team made a different discovery on Hatteras Island, what the CROATOAN tribe called home. Archaeologists found what Scott Dawson, president of the CROATOAN Archaeological Society, described as buckets of hammer scale. Hammer scale is a byproduct of iron forging. Iron forging on this scale was an English technology, not a known CROATOAN practice. This is showing a presence of the English working metal and living in the Indian village for decades, Dawson said. Not trading, living, working, forging, the kind of activity that suggests not a brief visit but sustained coexistence. The evidence does not point to one place, it points to several. Roanoke Island, Salmon Creek, the Chowan River, Hatteras Island, 4 sites, 1 departure, and 117 people whose path archaeology is only now beginning to trace. But if they scattered, why did no English expedition find them? In 1607, the Jamestown colonists heard reports from the Powhatan of white people living among tribes to the south. The Zuniga map of 1608, drawn by a Spanish spy, marked 2 locations where survivors of the 1587 colony might have resided, yet no search party ever confirmed them. The Powhatan told the Jamestown settlers that some of the Roanoke colonists had been massacred, but they also reported others living peacefully among the CROATOAN and other tribes. 2 contradictory stories from the same source. Both could be true, neither could be verified. Virginia Dare became a symbol not because anything was known about her life, but because nothing was. In the centuries that followed, people filled that silence with stories. Noble maiden, native princess, English survivor. None of them were based on evidence. All of them reveal how desperately we want to resolve what cannot be resolved. Her mother, Eleanor, is even more obscure. Remembered only as the daughter of John White and the mother of Virginia Dare. She made a voyage while pregnant, gave birth in a struggling colony, and watched her father sail away when her daughter was 9 days old. Then she vanished from history. In 2005, the Lost Colony DNA Project began testing descendants of both English families and Native American tribes in the region. The theory: if colonists assimilated, their DNA might survive in modern populations. The results were inconclusive. Too many generations, too much intermarriage, too little surviving documentation. Some members of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina claim descent from the Lost Colony. Their oral histories mention white ancestors and English words in their early vocabulary. But DNA evidence has not confirmed a direct link. The claim remains contested, not disproven, not proven. Another layer of uncertainty. The most unsettling fact about Roanoke is not that 117 people disappeared. It is that they may not have disappeared at all. They may have simply stopped being English. They may have taken native names, spoken native languages, raised children who never knew they were descended from carpenters and bricklayers from London. They may have survived by becoming something else entirely. And if they did, then the word carved into that tree was not a mystery. Perhaps it meant, we are here, we are safe, we have become part of this place. But John White, standing in an empty settlement on his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, could not read it that way. He read it as a clue to a puzzle he would spend the rest of his life failing to solve. Theory 1. Assimilation. The strongest evidence for this theory comes from Hatteras Island, home of the CROATOAN tribe. The 2025 discovery of hammer-scale, iron-forging byproduct that only the English produced, suggests sustained metalworking in a native village. Scott Dawson, who has excavated the site since 2009, believes a significant portion of the colony relocated to Hatteras. They don't know they're lost, he argues, so there's no reason to split up. But archaeologists caution. Hammer scale proves English presence, not necessarily the entire colony. A small group could have produced the same evidence. Oral histories from the CROATOAN and later Hatteras tribes mention white ancestors. The Lumbee claim descent, but the archaeological evidence, while compelling, does not conclusively prove that all 117 colonists relocated together. Theory 2. Dispersal. The first colony foundations excavations at Site X and Site Y suggest a different pattern. Small groups of colonists moving inland, perhaps negotiating separately with different tribes. The Zuniga map of 1608 marks 2 locations where survivors were reported. The quantity of pottery at Site Y suggests more than a brief stay. If the colonists broke into family groups, each seeking refuge with different tribes, no single location would contain evidence of all 117. Theory 3. Unknown fate. The most honest answer may be that there is no single answer. CROATOAN was not a destination. It was a direction, and 117 people followed it into a silence that archaeology is only now beginning to break. Some may have survived on Hatteras, others inland, others not at all. The mystery persists not because the evidence is absent, but because it is scattered, ambiguous and incomplete. John White died in 1593, 3 years after his failed return. He never found his daughter. He never found his granddaughter. He never learned what happened to the 115 people who had trusted him with their lives. His final years were spent on one of Raleigh's Irish estates, or perhaps in London, painting, remembering, wondering. Virginia Dare was 9 days old when her grandfather left her on that island. She would have turned 3 on the day he returned to find her gone. We do not know if she lived to be 4, or 14, or 40. We do not know if she ever learned that her grandfather spent the rest of his life trying to find her. The Roanoke colonists left us one word, CROATOAN, and 4 centuries of silence. Which theory do you believe? Drop your answer below. The best one gets featured in next week's community post. If you made it this far, subscribe for more stories that refuse to stay buried. Vanished threads. Some stories stay buried, we dig anyway.